One day I had to travel to an unknown city for work. The business dragged on, and I was forced to return home late in the evening, when the sun had already disappeared behind the horizon, leaving the world in the embrace of darkness. This was the second time I had traveled this road, and the terrain I found myself in was completely unfamiliar to me. As night fell, the landscape of sparse, dilapidated houses and fields turned into a desolate expanse. The fog swept over the road in thick waves, as if to swallow everything in its path. I began to feel nervous as it became almost impossible to see road signs and markings through the fog. Gliding helplessly along the road, I realized that I would soon have to stop and wait until morning. At that moment, two red points of light flashed in front of me, seemingly out of nowhere. I felt a small wave of relief. They were the headlights of another car. Without a second thought, I decided to follow them, hoping that they would lead me to a place where I could find help, or at least the right way. As I pondered my situation, I glanced down at my phone, wishing it had a navigation app installed. The fog was getting thicker, obscuring my view. Still, the two red dots on the horizon remained my only lifeline, keeping me from complete despair. The road deteriorated and I could feel the wheels of my car shaking over bumps and potholes. But I refused to give up and continued to follow the headlights, even though they seemed to be receding into the distance. Suddenly the fog lifted and I could see my surroundings. My eyes fixed on what lay ahead, and a sense of dread gripped me, sending shivers down my spine. I realized that all this time I hadn't been on a road, but rather gliding across a barren field, traversing an eerie wasteland bordered by dark trees. It was so strange and disturbing to see this landscape unfold before my eyes. I slammed on the brakes and stepped out of the car, hoping to catch a glimpse of the headlights that had guided me through the fog for so long. But to my horror and astonishment, they began to fade into the distance, disappearing into the darkness of the night. My heart raced and my eyes darted around. It was then that I realized I wasn't alone. When I looked at my hands, I saw a translucent quality, as if they were made of smoke. My soul froze in horror as I realized that I was merely a ghost, condemned to wander this dark abode. I was bound to this place, just like the other abandoned and lost souls here. My memories were now crystal clear. On that fateful night, the last time I drove down that road, I was the victim of a tragic accident. My car spun out of control and crashed into a tree with such force that my survival became impossible. My life was abruptly cut short in that ravine, and now I was condemned to wander aimlessly in that dark realm. I came to realize that the headlights I had been following were nothing more than an illusion, a seductive mirage from my own past. They were the specter of my own mistakes, luring me deeper into this dark reality. I was cursed, not only by my own misfortunes, but by the very nature of this place, where lost souls and wandering spirits were trapped in the shadows. And so I had become one of them, a forsaken soul held captive in this abyssal dimension. My moans and whispers clashed with the impenetrable silence of the surrounding trees. Though my form lacked substance, allowing me to pass through objects, I still felt the chilling sensation of cold and darkness that always accompanied me. I wandered through the ravine, desperately searching for answers, for a way to free myself from this cursed fate. Words could not express the depth of my suffering and despair. I was a ghost, shackled by my own past, and my essence was saturated with an infinite longing. So I continued my wanderings in this desolate abode where time seemed but a distant shadow. I watched as other lost travelers meandered through this cursed place, trying to find an escape, much as I had once done. We were prisoners of eternity, trapped in darkness and oblivion. Among the forlorn trees, I detected something strange, a periodic occurrence of ghostly whispers and rustling coming from the depths of the ravine. I sensed that I was not alone in this wandering. Someone or something else inhabited this cursed corner. Curiosity surged within me, a thirst to understand the nature of the creatures or powers that dwelt in this realm. One evening, I decided to embark on an exploration. My ethereal form glided through the trees, each step accompanied by the rustling of decaying leaves beneath my feet. The further I ventured, the more pronounced the sounds and rustling became, permeating the air and creating an eerie atmosphere. Eventually, I arrived at the source of these auditory puzzles, an ancient, dilapidated hut shrouded in gloomy cobwebs and crevices. I entered with the utmost caution, and an icy chill pierced my disembodied being, penetrating to the depths of my soul. Gradually, my eyes adjusted to the darkness, revealing the remnants of furniture covered in layers of dust and forgetfulness. In the center of the room, an unusual sight caught my attention, an altar adorned with enigmatic symbols and candles casting an ethereal glow. It was a place where the macabre forces had drawn their followers, where forbidden rituals were performed and pacts were forged in the name of darkness. I sensed that this place held the key to my deliverance, the answer to unraveling the mystery that had bound me to this canyon. As I approached the altar, I immersed myself in studying its intricate symbols and drawings. They embodied the ancient and nefarious forces that thrived in this unholy ground. A flicker of hope ignited in the depths of my ethereal self. I realized that in order to sever my ties with this cursed place, I would have to locate and dismantle the source of its power. Thus, my quest for liberation began, a swift and resolute path that I embarked upon. I delved deeper into the obscure recesses of the canyon, unraveling its mysteries and confronting the perils that lurked within its vast expanse. With each challenging moment and ominous encounter, I could feel the strength of my essence growing, bringing me closer to my ultimate objective. Finally, in the deepest recesses of the canyon, I uncovered the source of the foreboding forces, a weathered artifact infused with magic and malevolence. In this very place, my ethereal form radiated with intensified luminosity, embodying my unwavering determination to prevail. Harnessing every ounce of strength within me, I concentrated my energy on obliterating this source. My soul pierced through the artifact, causing its energy to wither and decay. Suddenly, a deafening explosion reverberated throughout the vicinity, and I found myself engulfed in a swirling vortex of power that shook the canyon to its core. Anticipating the unknown, I closed my eyes, bracing myself for what lay ahead. As the vortex subsided, I stood rooted to the spot, yet an unmistakable transformation had taken place. The transparency of my ghostly form began to dissipate, and my appearance regained clarity, my skin returning to its natural hue. I gazed at my hands, and a realization washed over me: I was no longer a ghost. I had broken free from the shackles of the ravine, liberated from the grasp of the dark forces that had held me captive. My heart swelled with elation and profound gratitude that I could reclaim my existence in the realm of the living. However, in that very moment, I comprehended the steep price I had paid for my release. I had become cursed, akin to those who had wandered the depths of this ravine before me. I had transformed into a ghost, fated to roam the world without respite, forever denied solace. My liberation had become a fresh torment, a new form of punishment for the transgressions committed within these forsaken grounds. And so, I assumed the role of a ghostly apparition, condemned to wander the realms, recounting my story to those who would lend an ear.
Once many years ago, I rented an apartment in a tower block. I liked to go out at night, and rarely came back early. The local bullies didn't bother me, because I was a tough and strong guy. It was rare that anyone tried to hurt me. But one day coming home late, I noticed a crowd of people near the entrance. As I approached, I asked what was going on. It turned out that a man had fallen ill. He was found on the landing, almost unconscious, apparently having a heart attack. A few days later, I noticed that the light in the lift shaft was on all the time. This went on for several days in a row. I assumed it was due to repairs being carried out, as sometimes there was a knocking sound coming from the shaft. After a few days, the light in the shaft went out. I didn't pay much attention to it. I went away for a week, and when I came back, my grandmother told me the story from the entrance hall. It turned out that there was a young and beautiful girl who lived in our building. I had been planning to meet her for a long time. I even tried a little. My grandmother told me that they found her in the morning on the stairs, next to the lift. She had been there all night, covered in gray. They took her to the hospital, but she didn't talk, she just stared. I was saddened by this story, especially because I didn't understand what had happened to her. One day, around midnight, I was coming home and noticed that the light in the lift shaft was on again. I was surprised because it wasn't supposed to be under repair at that time. On the other hand, our lift's operators were not always responsible and could simply have forgotten to turn off the lights. I went up to my floor, but as soon as the lift stopped, everything went out. The lights went out in the lift, in the shaft, and in the lobby. Everything was in darkness and silence. And then, I heard a distinct grinding noise coming from the depths of the lift. I was almost speechless with fear. I barely managed to get the lift doors open and got out. Immediately, a light went on in the lift and a strange giggling sound came from the shaft. It was already too much for me. The lift jerked and shook violently, as if it had been pushed hard from below. In the gap between the doors, I saw something terrible. A thin hand. I pressed myself against the wall. The lift began to rise, and the more the doors parted, the clearer I could see what was behind them. I saw a distorted face, full of misery and horror. I could see that the face was missing half of its skull, and in its place was a bloody mess. I was found sitting on a bench in the yard. All my hair had turned gray, and I was in a state of deep shock. I spent some time in a psychiatric hospital. Later, the locals told me that two young boys decided to take a lift into the shaft just for fun. One of them managed to get out, but the other was crushed on the top floor, turning him into a horribly mutilated body. I have since left that apartment in the tower block and started a new chapter of my life elsewhere. But I know in my heart that my lift adventure will stay with me forever. I realized that dark forces can infiltrate the most ordinary places, and that we must be vigilant and willing to confront them in order to protect ourselves and others. My story was a cautionary tale for those who choose to explore the depths of the lift shaft in that block of flats.